It's the Last Stand Podcast. And here's your host, Brian Custer.
That's right. The Last Stand, the unfiltered, straight talk from some of the biggest celebrities from sports and entertainment. And, today's guest comes from the sport of boxing. This guy's a former welterweight champion. One time he was the IBF champion. He was the former WBC welterweight champion. He's known as Showtime Shawn Porter. Shawn, welcome to The Last Stand.
What's happening, BC?
It's good to have you on the program, my brother. Listen,
yeah,
look, the last time that we saw you in the ring, you got this really a lopsided victory over Sebastian Formella.
Yeah.
Realistically, when will we see Shawn Porter back in the ring?
Realistically, we got now one thing happening. There were two things. Now we're just waiting on one. So I am the mandatory for the WBO title, the IBF title, and the WBC title in the welterweight division. WBO champion is still Terence Crawford. That's the fight that I want. And now we're just waiting on the second thing to happen. We're waiting to figure out who's going to win this fight between Danny Garcia and Errol Spence Jr. That guy will be unified, and then I'll be looking to either fight the unified champion or fight the WBO champion.
And when could we see you then? Realistically, obviously it'd be 2021. Do you know what month that we're talking about?
Realistically, I took a look at it. I know that hypothetically, if Danny Garcia wins this fight, he's the guy who only really fights once a year. I don't see him getting in the ring before summer, if not the fall. If it happens to be Errol Spence Jr., I could see him getting in the ring a little sooner, late spring, early summer. I don't see Errol Spence waiting until late summer. If I'm fighting Errol Spence Jr., it'll be around the months of maybe May or June. And if it's if Terence Crawford and I decide to make this fight happen, we'll be fighting. I could see us fighting late spring, before the summertime. So to sum it up, I know I said a whole lot, but to sum it up, Terence Crawford, I could see us fighting maybe around April or May. Errol Spence Jr., I could see us fighting maybe around May or June, July. And if it's Danny Garcia, I could see us getting in the ring maybe closer to July or August. He likes to take
I love when I have guys of your caliber on, because I love asking this question. If it was up to you, name your next three opponents.
If it's up to me, Manny Pacquiao, Terence Crawford, and then more than likely Errol Spence Jr. I think if it was up to me, it would be Manny Pacquiao, Terence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr.
And tell me why, whether it's you, whether it's Terence Crawford we've had on the show, whether it's Errol Spence who we've had on the show, why everyone throws out Manny Pacquiao?
That's the first name you say. For me, it's a multiple reasons. I think the number one reason is I think that I have the greatest chance out of all the guys out there at beating Manny Pacquiao. I think that I have the opportunity to make the fight with Manny Pacquiao more exciting than anybody else out there in the welterweight division. And of course, there is always the money that's linked to Manny Pacquiao. You can't ignore that. But for me, I think that I have the best opportunity to beat him. And I also think that I have the opportunity to make it the most exciting fight whenever it does happen of the year. So if it happens in 2021, it will be the fight of the year.
What did you think about the young Conor Benn who came out and said, listen, quote, I dominated Sebastian Formella and beat him more convincingly than Shawn Porter did?
I saw a little bit of the fight. I saw mostly highlights. His fighting style is a little different. It's not like mine, and especially in that fight. Obviously, when we're talking boxing, styles make fights. I think that Sebastian was able to hit him more. I think Sebastian was in more of a situation where he wasn't just in survival mode against Conor Benn, and I don't think that Conor Benn is on my level. So I don't know if he was trying to take shots. I don't know if he was just trying to become a little bit more relevant after the fight or whatever. But I think that's what's going to happen. We just had Devin Haney fight the kid from Cuba and Gamboa, excuse me. And everybody's gonna compare that fight with Gamboa's fight with Tank Davis, So it's just that's what happens in boxing. But I don't think he beat Formella more convincingly than I did, and I don't think he looked better than I did.
Do you think he's trying to inch his way closer to a fight with you?
I don't know if it's inching towards a fight with me or just trying to become relevant in the weight class and kind of say, hey, I deserve an opportunity, whether that's to fight Shawn Porter or to fight anyone else with the belt or someone else of more significant caliber. So I think more than anything, you just say, hey, look at what I did against this guy. Look at me,
We had Terence Crawford here on the show recently. And during our talk, he said that you and him had a conversation.
Yeah.
He said you guys talked personally. Yeah. My question is, why hasn't then a Crawford versus Porter fight happened?
The point in time when I called him, it was just before I had gotten it might have been just after I found out that I was going to fight for Miller. When I spoke with Crawford, it was back in maybe early July, right around there. And I just, simple conversation. Hey, are we going to do this or what? What's going on? And then we had our conversation. Basically, he says, hey, man, I'm working on something big right now. And I said, all right, I'm going to respect that. I'm not going to step on your toes, man. Make it happen. Whatever it is, make it happen. I don't think at that point in time it was Kell Brook that he was working on. But he said he was working on something big and the respect that I have for him and also his career. I said, all right, I'm going to let you do what you do. I said, hey, man, I know they're about to line me up with somebody and you're better than the dude. And I just wanted to see if we can make it happen. And that's it. Simple as that. We have not had a conversation about fighting each other since early July, late July. And maybe we'll come back around after this fight with Errol Spence Jr. and Danny Garcia.
What did you think then of Bob Arum? Bob Arum coming out and basically saying, look, I can't make money off of promoting Terence Crawford. It's just I lose too much money. What did you think about him making it public? And, hey, look, when Terence was on the show, he even said, it's a business decision. My deal with Top Rank is up over next year. And if I have to get these big-time fights with these guys, you never know. I may be a member of the PBC.
And he's going to make a business decision, and he's going to do what's best for him. I mean, people don't understand this, but when I called him and talked to him in July or whatever, we were on the phone for 30 minutes to almost an hour, and it wasn't just talking about boxing. We were talking about our lives, our families. Like, we have a genuine friendship, and I respect that and appreciate that, which is why I'm going to, with anybody else, I'll get in the ring and call you out if you're Danny Garcia. I'll show up in your backyard if you're Errol Spence Jr. But with him, I just really appreciate him as a person. So when we talked, it was not just about boxing. So I know him. I'm just saying that to say I know him. When it comes time for him to extend his contract with Top Rank or decide whatever he's going to do, he's going to make a business decision based on what's best for his career and what's best for his family. I definitely can see him making a move to PBC because this is where the money can be made and this is where the biggest fights can be made. If you're Bob Arum, I got a feeling Bob Arum is understanding that he may be ready to make that move, and because it's going to happen, I'm just going to say how I feel. I don't think he should do that. I think anybody who's wanting to keep their client, they're going to wine and dine their client and do whatever it takes to keep their client. So I got a feeling Bob knows what's going to happen. I think Bob's just going to take some shots anyway because he feels like the inevitable is going to happen. However, I don't feel that what he said was right. I don't agree with it. All those type of things you keep in house. You never let that kind of stuff out because once it gets out, now you and I are talking about it. Everybody's going to talk about it. And now if Terence Crawford decides to stay with Top Rank, now you got to mend all of these different things that you've said. That's going to be the topic of discussion. Nobody's going to talk about, oh, he stayed with Bob. Everyone's going to talk about why he stayed with Bob. Why is he staying with you? So I think that I really do have a feeling that Bob is like, hey, the inevitable is about to happen. Let me just take these shots anyway. But it's something I think he should have left at home.
I thought it was interesting talking with Terence, and he said, listen, and this was Terence Crawford talking. It's funny how guys like Thurman are calling me out when all those guys had the belts. None of them wanted to fight me. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, they wanted to keep those belts on the PB side of the street. He goes, now you look at some of these guys, he says, whether it's Porter, whether it's Thurman, he goes, none of these guys have the belts anymore. And all of a sudden, my WBO belt has become relevant. They had no interest in fighting me in the past. Now they want to fight me. What's your response to that?
I spoke on this in my last episode of the Porter Way podcast, which drops every Tuesday. Last episode, I made it clear. Prior to him fighting Jose Benavidez, I never saw myself fighting him. So leading up to Jose Benavidez, when he first moved to the welterweight division, I talked to him right before he moved to the division. I said, yo, you really moving up? He said, yeah. I said, man, I was like, what are you moving up for? He said, man, I done cleaned out the division. They want me to stay at 140, but I want to move up. I looked, I said, so who you going to fight? He said, man, I want the same guy you want. I said, who is that? He's like, Danny Garcia. At that time, I hadn't fought Danny. So when he moved up to the welterweight division, I was just like scratching my head, like I never saw myself fighting this guy, man. I'm not gonna fight him. He fights Jose Benavidez, and I'm sitting there by myself watching the fight. And when he knocked out Jose, I sat back. I was like, damn, I might have to fight this dude. Like and then I just these thoughts. I'm like, he is that good. He's that exciting to watch. Damn, I might have to fight this dude. And I was like, no, we'll talk. Well, maybe we will, maybe we won't, But since he fought Jose Benavidez, and since the talks of him fighting Errol Spence Jr. started to happen, it was him and Errol. Never cared. That's y'all thing. Y'all do y'all thing. But after my fight with Errol Spence Jr., everybody's saying, oh, maybe the fight with Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter would be good. Then Errol Spence gets into his accident, and now everybody's like, we don't want to see that fight anymore. We want Terence and Shawn. And so I start hearing Terence and Shawn, and I'm like, damn, man. All right, I'll fight him. If nobody else will, I'll fight him. With me, it's 100% the competitive spirit that I have and the willingness to fight someone who a lot of people feel he's feared. And a lot of people don't want to fight him. A lot like me taking on Errol Spence Jr. I know what I can do, and you give me an opportunity, and I'm going to do it. I'm not going to let anything stop me, So really the only thing preventing me from fighting Terence Crawford is the fact that he and I both haven't said yes. If he's willing to say yes, the fight will happen. But that's one fight that I really am not going to, at least I don't think I'm going to really pressure because that's something I just never saw myself doing. I never saw myself fighting Terence Crawford. But because everybody says they want that fight, now I'm starting to manifest it myself. I'm not even going to lie to you, BC. I was hitting the bag last night in the dark, and on my mind was Terence Crawford. So it is what it is.
Does it upset you at all when you see these big welterweight fights going down, whether it's Spence, Garcia, guys calling for, no, it's got to be Crawford and Spence, Pacquiao and somebody, and no one calls out Shawn Porter. You know what I mean? Does that upset you at all?
No, it doesn't. I think that the sport of boxing is changing. I know that I am an entertainer. At the end of the day, I am paid to entertain. And I don't think a lot of other fighters understand that and know that. I think that they look at themselves just as fighters and just as a fighter who has to hold on to an undefeated record or has to fight the biggest name fighters out there and will not, quote unquote, settle for someone else because they don't have a belt, or someone else, being myself, because I don't necessarily have that record that other fighters have. It doesn't bother me because I understand what these fighters are going for. However, I do understand that every time I go out there, I'm not going out there just to beat a fighter or just to keep now 3 behind the wins that I have and keep my win column at my lose column at three. I'm also going out there to entertain people. And a lot like my fight with Errol Spence Jr., at the end of the day, if I win or lose, my fight with Keith Thurman, win or lose, it was unbelievable. I can't believe – I look at those highlights, I'm like, I cannot believe that was me. But on the other side of it, I understand that there were so many people that were entertained and satisfied with what we did, that losing really wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. The worst thing that could have happened in that situation was a letdown to the crowd and a letdown to everyone that watched. So it doesn't bother me. I'm just waiting my opportunities and letting God lead me. That's all.
You mentioned Errol Spence. Obviously, we had Errol. We had his trainer on, Derrick James, as well. And, I asked him about the comment about Derrick being overrated as a trainer. And I'm sure you probably heard Derrick's response about, hey, look, we've taken every belt that Shawn Porter has ever had. So what does that say about his trainer? And number one never talks about number two. What's your response to that?
That's actually why I hit you up, because I said, man, I don't know what happened, but things just got misconstrued. I didn't say what everyone is saying I said. And before, it was just about promoting my podcast. So we were talking about who could we get to promote the podcast. And I was like, oh, yeah, eventually we'll get on the BC show. And then that comes out. I was like, oh, I gotta hit him up right now. I got to get on the show, So I said, I just wanted to clear my name. I don't think that Derrick James is a bad coach. I don't know his coaching style to the point where I can judge how he is as a coach. So I think at that point in time, I was just speaking on him having 2 championship fighters and whether or not those fighters would be champions if he was in their corners. And at first thought, I said, yeah, no, those guys would be champions without him. And then I actually got a chance to see him go to work with Jermell Charlo. And I heard some things in the corner. I said, okay, this guy knows his stuff. He's a really good coach, and these guys could be champions without him. However, he is a component in their careers. So, if anything, I may not have given him the credit that I think maybe other people would expect. And now just so we have an understanding, the credit is there. I just have not worked with him one-on-one. So at that point in time, I really didn't know if he was that kind of trainer. But I heard some things in that corner when he had Jermell Charlo in his last fight. And obviously we've seen him game plan against me, against Kell Brook, against Lamont Peterson. So we've seen some good things from him, so I think he's a really good coach out there. As far as him taking my belts, congratulations. It's a part of the game, and it is what it is. But I look forward to getting back in the ring against him, whether that's Errol Spence Jr. or any other of the fighters that he's got out there. I'm in here to compete and show that I'm the best. And I don't think that even in losing the fight with Errol Spence Jr., I don't think I showed that or he showed that he's a better trainer than my dad. And I really don't think that his fighters showed that he's a better fighter than me. I just think it was that night and the judges and the night. It was a great night.
Yeah. Listen, I already know how you get down, especially when it comes to being in shape, top shape. Coach Wade is always pushing you to the limits. And I remember when you were champion and you had the belt, you hear like different fighters whispering like, yo, I know how active Shawn Porter is. There's no way any fighter can be that active and throw that many punches and have that kind of pace in the ring. He's got to be on something. Did any of those whispers ever upset you?
None. I am someone who just relies on what I do. Even as a broadcaster now, it's never been a thing of me listening to what people have said about me and me making changes based on what I feel other people have said about me. The name of the show is the Porter Way podcast for a reason. Like the things that I do and the way that I do them is just a Porter Way. Wade is an extension of my dad. My dad has just really honed on into everything that God has made me to be. And my heart just pumps a little differently, So I actually relish in those moments when people talk about me possibly doing substances, because I'm like, man, you're really just, stating how good I really am. You know, you're commending me, and even though you're questioning me, I feel like I'm being commended for what I do. So, you know, all I do is smile at it, I feel it makes me feel very very gracious that I can do something that most people aren't able to do without anything extra.
At the highest level, how prevalent do you think it is in the sport?
What's that? It's like substances?
Yeah, guys using.
You know what?
Stuff.
I don't know. I really don't know. Like for instance, I take an iron pill. I have an iron deficiency. I take vitamins, just things that you need that you aren't able to get through food and nutrition every single day. I think a lot of fighters out there do that. They're starting to understand how to do that. I think one thing that I do that a lot of fighters don't do is I take care of my body. I do a lot of different treatments. I have a cold tub right here in my garage, sauna, jacuzzi, things like that. I take care of my body, and I think that, and also getting rest. And I think that doing that along the way in a camp, a lot of guys have not figured out the equation to being able to rest, nutrition, and lose weight and stay strong and all of that. We just really have figured out the recipe to my success. And I think a lot of other fighters really have not figured that out. I think a lot of other fighters do like protein drinks and stuff like that, but and I'm very optimistic. So I really don't feel like a lot of other fighters out there doing anything that's foul play.
How or when do you see Shawn Porter moving up to 154?
You know what? I don't know. I had a conversation with my dad about that this summer. It was during the COVID and the quarantine, and I was just hanging with my family and things like that. I think at that point in time when I had the conversation, I felt like it was something that needed to be done. Because of the layoff and because of being out of the ring and out of training and things like that. But the way that we were able to make 147 in this last fight with Formella was amazing. And so now we're in a position where we're going to gain muscle and improve my strength and my power. And if we see anything different along the way with trying to get back down to 47, then we'll make the move. But right now, everything is very comfortable at 147.
And that leads me into how many more fights then do you see yourself at 147?
You know what? I don't know. And I'm not just saying this. I really am allowing God to lead me. I listen and I reflect on what I should be doing. The fight with Formella was never supposed to happen. I had done multiple interviews and they're saying, hey, they're talking about bringing boxing back without fans. Are you going to do that? I said, hell no. I was like, I just fought at the Staples Center. You think I want to fight in front of nobody? That's not going to happen. And then I'm just sitting around and I hear something tell me like, hey, you got to get back in the ring. It's you that has to be the one to show all those other fighters out there that it can be done. And that's why the fight with Formella was made, you know. So I'm just waiting on the guidance and of course my team, my dad to tell me which way to go.
And along those lines, who are the names that you gotta have at 147 before you move up?
That's an interesting one. I think really the gotta have is Manny Pacquiao. I don't think Terence Crawford is a gotta have, but that's a fight that I would really like. And then other than that, I mean, I've been in the ring with all the other guys, you know. So you line them up, you tell me when, and I'll make it entertaining and go out there and beat them. You know, I think the gotta have is Manny Pacquiao, and probably the next really want is Terence Crawford. Other than that, man, they come when they come.
Talking about those big fights, whether it's been Kell Brook, whether it has been Keith Thurman, whether it's been Errol Spence, when you look back on those key fights, what's the one thing that you said, man, if I could do it all over again, I would probably do this in those fights? What is that?
The Kell Brook, that one's simple. I simply was out of my mind. I was coming off of I know this. I was coming off of a big win with Paulie Malignaggi and getting in the ring with Kell Brook. I don't remember how long he had been pro at that point. I think he was close to 30-0, 25-0, something like that. And I was just looking at him like, you're not on my level. And I just knew I was out of my mind for 12 rounds thinking I was going to touch him him and knock him out. And when it didn't happen, the decision didn't go my way. And right there, I was like, never again will you get in the ring and just be so focused on one thing and be so headstrong, feeling like one thing is going to happen. And I've been able to adjust and do different things in every fight since that fight. That was a big learning lesson for me. The fight with Keith Thurman, I always say, man, I don't know what I could have done to win that fight. I think that fight with Keith Thurman, I think there were points where I stayed there too long and I allowed myself to get hit, and his punches were a little heavier than mine. My work rate was higher than his and things like that. But I think there were just moments that I gave up rounds. And I think the same thing ended up happening against Errol Spence Jr. I think I learned from that with the fight with Keith Thurman, so my pace was a little different with Errol Spence Jr. But I think there still were some moments where I stayed there a little too long, especially the moment where I got hit with a big hook and my hand touched the canvas. So I think with those two guys, especially, it would just be the pacing and being smarter and knowing when you're staying there too long and knowing when to get out.
Shawn, what is your ultimate goal in the sport of boxing?
Good question. You know what? I'm really not sure what my ultimate goal is. I'm not sure. I think I'm not sure because I'm waiting to be led. And I'll be honest with you, for a long time, I had two goals. Number one was winning the WBC title, and number two was beating Errol Spence Jr. I made both of those goals, I think, in 2016 or 2017. I made both of those goals. And they both have come, the WBC as well as fighting Errol Spence Jr. So maybe, if anything, maybe getting in the ring and beating him. But I don't think it'll mean as much if he gets beat by Danny Garcia or if I get passed up on the opportunity and he ends up fighting and losing to Terence Crawford. You know, I think then that goal won't mean as much.
Listen, you have definitely made a really nice transition into broadcasting, calling fights. As you talked about the Porter way, you've got your own podcast. Yeah. Is that your future? Is that your future once boxing's over?
That, along with some things. I was just on the line with someone about a week ago about getting certified to become a life coach. That is definitely in my future. I have a future in helping other athletes, helping professional men, professional Black men obtain their goals, understanding how to be goal-oriented, understanding how to plan for your future, understanding even from a psychological standpoint how to control your emotions, control your psyche, even in camp. I know a lot of these guys have hard camps. It wears down on them mentally, physically, emotionally. I'm here to help. You know, that's my ultimate goal as a human being, is to help this world. And so I'm definitely going to get a life coaching certification. I'm going to start doing that, professional athletes. And of course, I'm on my way right now as a broadcaster. That's something I always knew I was going to do. Was actually on the phone with someone this morning, and I told them I never saw myself broadcasting boxing. My whole life, I always boxed and played football, but when I wasn't playing football, I was watching it. When I wasn't boxing, was never watching boxing. Football, was always watching football, and I always wanted to be a commentator and a broadcaster. I didn't know it was going to be boxing, but the crazy part about it is I absolutely love talking boxing, and I love it, man. So that's definitely something I'm going to do for a long time.
You know, you've talked about your father, and he certainly played a vital role in your life, obviously being your trainer. And you know, you hear so many people say, I just feel like Shawn's father is too domineering. It seems like Shawn's father is like living his life through his son, so to speak. Well, can you explain the relationship, you and your father, and has it changed now that you've got your own family and you've got your own son?
My dad, I just talked with my wife this morning. We're going to invite my dad over for Thanksgiving. My dad lives literally around the corner. I can get on my bike. I have a road bike that I use. I can get on my bike and coast all the way to his house. The thing about my dad, and I'll make it very quick, but the things that Bob Arum has come out and said about Terence Crawford All of that stays at home. You don't bring that stuff to the light. You don't let people in on intimate things like that. That's an intimate situation. Eventually, it will become a business situation that's public, but at that capacity, that's intimate and it stays in-house. My dad and I have gone through things that no one in the world will ever know about unless he and I feel they should know about them or want them to know about them. There's just things that people will never understand. There's been moments that we've had that have crushed us. There's moments that we've had that have brought us to our highest. But those are moments that are between he and I. And if we bring that to the light, we will. When people talk about my dad, he's dominating you and he's controlling you and your career and he's living through you. He won't let you be your own man and all that kind of stuff. It goes in one ear and right out the other because I know my relationship with my dad. However, I will tell you this. Over the course of the last 2 years, my dad's gone through some things for himself and he and I have gone through some things that have made us tighter than we've ever been. And I know that the world thought at one point we were tight. The world knew at one point, the Porter duo, man, those are the guys right there. We weren't even like that. But now we're like this. And I've had conversations with my dad. I said, hey, we're at a place now, and I ain't going back, all right? Right here is where we stay. I said, don't go anywhere. So let's fix this right now. You know, I've had to grab my dad recently by the head and look at him and say, hey, we ain't doing this. Let's get it right, you know. And my dad are like this, man, and I don't intend on us ever parting. But our relationship is the way we want it to be. The professional side of our relationship is the way we want it to be. Even my broadcasting, he really does not deal with that very much. But I just coming up against something right now, and I don't have to include him. But I was out, and as I was walking into the house to have this conversation with you, I said, you know what, I'm going to call my dad a little bit later because I just want him to know what's going on. It's how I want things. So It's not just how he wants things, you know. So we have a beautiful relationship, man, and I love it. He loves my children. He loves my family, and we're good.
That's great. I love it. All right, Shawn, people who watch the show, we allow them to submit questions. So we got a number of them for you here, and let's get right to them from social media. We'll start from Twitter. This one from Xavier. He says, who has the better punching power, Danny or Errol?
I always tell people, if you want to know how hard somebody hits, let them hit you. You know, I really do think that in the midst of the battle and that adrenaline is so high, a lot of it you don't feel. A lot of it is you feel yourself get touched and you know, like, hey, that's a moment right there. You got to get that moment back. You know, things like that. But I think that the case in point of Errol Spence being able to make my hand touch the canvas, I think that's a testament to his power. And I also think that he hit me more than Danny Garcia did in our match. So I would have to say Errol Spence Jr. is the harder puncher.
Brandon from Facebook asked, why didn't you have a rematch clause for Kell Brook?
That was something that happened like the week of the fight. And that's just, I think that's one thing people don't really know about contracts, but sometimes not all of it is inked in way back when the fight is announced. A lot of that doesn't get inked in until, you know, shortly before the fight, you know, and that was a situation where it was almost like there was no turning back, either have the fight or relinquish the title, and, you know, we did what we had to do.
This one from Twitter, it says, be honest, do you truthfully believe Crawford is avoiding you?
No, I don't. I don't think Crawford is avoiding me. I think Crawford wants the best for his career. And I think even him right now, I think he looks at me and he says, you know, we're boys and everything, but you got 3 losses. And I'm not going to fight you because you got 3 losses. I want one of the undefeated guys that has a belt and one of the guys that everybody thinks is better than you. And I think that that's what he's looking at. And, you know, to each his own. I don't hate him for that. And if I'm wrong, you know, maybe we'll have a conversation. He'll tell me that I'm wrong. But that's just, from my opinion, what I'm looking at. I think that he's looking at, you know, guys who are undefeated. And I have to say this. Manny Pacquiao is not undefeated. We all understand that. But Manny Pacquiao is a legendary fighter in this sport. There's no way around it. And we all want a piece of that action.
Yeah. This one from Twitter, it says, what did you learn from the Udenis Ugas fight?
I learned don't get in the ring and do something different without telling people you're gonna do something different. I think that everybody expected me to be Shawn Porter that they saw against a lot of other fighters, and when they didn't see that, I think they got that misunderstood what was going on. We had a game plan to box, and I think that my dad saw after maybe 2 rounds that boxing him was all we needed to do, and I trust my corner, and I did what my corner asked me to do. We were able to get out of there with the decision. I think that even the judges were expecting something different from me. And when they didn't get that, I think they felt that I wasn't doing what they expected because of Dennis Ugas, when in fact, we made a game plan before we got in the ring and we saw how effective it was and we stayed with it.
Mm.
I'm not
This one from
I'm not gonna fight again without telling people what I'm gonna do, because they need to understand who's coming to the ring.
Got it. This one from Joe from Facebook. He says he would like to know if your aggressive style requires more intensive training, and does that hurt you in the end when it comes to these fights?
You know what? I have had to think about that and assess that myself. I'm not going to change who I am as a fighter. I can't. It's my DNA to be a rough, hard, leave it all in the ring, fight with your heart kind of guy. But along with that, I have understood that. I mean, we do all of the training that we need to do to get prepared for a fight. We don't overtrain and we don't undertrain. I think I do a lot of things that other guys don't do, which is why you see me have the kind of work rate that I have. I swim. Not a lot of other guys swim. I do a lot of other different breathing techniques and things like that. But I have also looked at my rounds of boxing and felt like, okay, well, right there, your punch output was a lot higher than maybe it needed to be in order for you to win that round. But on the other side of it, I understand that overwhelming guys and putting a lot of pressure on them, not only physically, it wears them down mentally as well. So it's a tough one to teeter, and I'm working with it. And I think I'm making good adjustments. I think a good adjustment against Errol Spence Jr., where it wasn't just gas mashed on the pedal, and a lot like it was against Kell Brook and Keith Thurman. And I think there's just one more adjustment that needs to be made. The great part about it is I'm healthy, and I'm young, and I can make those kind of adjustments. So you have not seen the best Shawn Porter yet.
Oh, I like that.
It's crazy. I can say that. You haven't.
I like that. This one from Twitter, Dr. Hitman. He says, out of the 3 welterweights, Thurman, Garcia, and Spence, who was the most difficult and why?
Keith Thurman.
Why?
Game planning against Danny Garcia, I'm not going to say it was easy, but we basically knew what we needed to do. We also brought in Barry Hunter. That was the first time we had Barry in camp. We have been working with Barry since I turned pro, and even since before I turned pro. But that was the fight where my dad saw what Barry did with Lamont against Danny, and he wanted to add that to the program. So we game planned against Danny, and it basically worked the exact way we wanted it to. And the same thing with Errol Spence Jr. I think we had a very good game plan with Errol Spence Jr. I think it practically played out the way we wanted it to. I think just a few hiccups along the way. The biggest hiccup right there in the 11th round. But with Keith Thurman, I think Keith, out of the 3 of those guys, he's the one who's most likely to do what you don't expect him to do. He has a way of getting you to really bait you in and get you to do what he wants you to do. And so I think even though I controlled the ring against Keith and things like that, I think he still was able to kind of bait me into his fight where he wanted to fight and things like that. And so I think it was just a little harder to prepare for and also a little harder to fight against in the ring.
His follow-up on here says, which one out of the 3 would you like most want a rematch with? I would assume it's Errol Spence.
I think it's Errol Spence. If not Errol, it's got to be Keith. I think that's a fight out there that would be a lot of fun to promote and a lot of fun to play out again. I think the fight with Errol Spence Jr., I'm gunning for that dude, man. And I respect both guys, but I do think that I might want to fight with Keith Thurman a little bit more. I think it would be a little more fun along the way. You don't always get to have that kind of fun.
Juan from Facebook says, why should you continue to get world title opportunities when you've already lost title shots against 3 of the top guys?
Easy answer. When you're losing close fights against those guys, that's what happens at this level. You get to a point where you're not going to hit everybody with every jab that you're going to throw. It's not going to be the basic 1-2 that's going to win you the fight. You have to be able to adjust and do different things in the ring. And I've been able to do that against everybody that I've fought, especially the top guys, Danny Garcia, Errol Spence Jr., Keith Thurman. When you're contending the way that I am with those guys, even though you're losing, when it's razor thin and it's that close, people want that again. People want to see that again. And at the end of the day, like I said before, we're entertainers. People want to be entertained more than they want a winner and a loser. At the end of the day, I think people want a winner and a loser, but if they're entertained, they're going to be gracious no matter what. And that's what you get when I'm in the ring. You're going to get some entertainment, and you're going to get an exciting, unbelievable match. And that's why, even though I have 3 losses and 3 against the top guys in the world, people want to see me against those guys in the world. And even if it aren't those guys, they still want to see me in the ring. And it's because of what I do.
Last one. This one from Vince from Facebook says, as a broadcaster and a fighter, I would love to hear your take on this. Hearing Wilder on The Last Stand say that Fury's gloves were loaded with egg weights, that Fury's glove hand wasn't all the way in his glove. In today's boxing, can any of that happen?
That's the toughest part for me, is understanding what happens in the corner, what happens in the back room before the fight, what happens the day before the fight when you're looking at gloves and all of that kind of stuff. I just can't see it happening. I would love for him to hire some investigators to investigate this for him. I think as long as he's the one coming out with information and he's the one making all of the accusations as they are right now, I think everyone's going to look at him like he's a sore loser. I've seen some evidence. I've seen some videos. I've seen some things, and you're like, you're turning the eye. You're like, this could have happened, but it's very hard for me to fathom it because of the way the sport it works nowadays. It's so hard for that kind of stuff to get overlooked. And even in the ring, Kenny Bayless is one of the greatest referees in the world of all time. I just don't think there's something like that he would miss, So I would appreciate if Deontay understands that the world's not against you. The world loves you. Most of us still love you no matter what you went through in the ring, no matter how many losses you have, whatever the case may be. And we want you to get back in the ring, whether that's Terence, Tyson Fury or anyone else. And I think with that being said, man, he should have some other people really look into this and figure out what's going on.
Shawn Porter, we've come to the last segment of this show. We call it The Last Stand. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You give me the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Some say 135. Others say 154. In your opinion, what is the best division in boxing?
Well, 147 is the best division in boxing. I think that 130 is the new 147. I think right now 130 and 135, they have some great athletes, young kids, guys who really want to get after it, and that's what this sport needs right now. 135, 130 is the new 147.
Listen, I know you're into fashion. How would you describe Shawn Porter's style?
My style is the Porter way, man. I'm different. I think honestly, this is how it happened. What happened was, growing up, I have 2 older brothers. I always wore the hand-me-downs. So when it came time to go to church, I always had the hand-me-downs. Graduations at school, 5th grade, going into middle school going into high school, I looked bummy and I hated it. And so when I got some money, I just wanted to buy a suit. I bought a suit. And the suit was at home, and I see someone at a fight show, and it's a fighter, and he's wearing a suit. And so I'm like, okay, I think next time I'm going to wear my suit to the fight. Once I wear my suit to the fight, no one else has a suit on, and I'm like, this is me. This is my thing. I couldn't afford all those name brands back in the day, FUBU and Sean Carter or Sean John, and I couldn't afford all that stuff. And I had to wear the hand-me-downs. And so once I got some money and could acquire my own things, I didn't want what everybody else was wearing. I wanted to wear my own stuff. And so that's why you always see me in suits, or you see me in gear that just is not recognizable, because I can always make it mine. And so my style is the Porter way.
I love it. I love it. Okay, you're a Ohio native from Cleveland.
Sir.
What franchise has given Cleveland more disappointment? Is it the Browns, the Indians, or the Cavs?
I think the most disappointment has to be the Indians, because we've come that close a few times now, but I think 2, if not 3 times. But I have a feeling that Northeast Ohio especially is a football region. We're all about football. We put players in the NFL every single year. And so with that being said, I have a feeling that even though the Indians have come close and dropped a few, I got a feeling people are still more disappointed that the Browns have not been able to turn around and do the things that they've been able to do this year, being now 7-3.
Is Baker Mayfield the answer?
I don't know. I had this conversation with my boys yesterday. I don't know. I can't give up on him because he is a #1 pick, and because I don't think we have a second option right now. We got Case Keenum, but I don't think Case Keenum's the guy. I think we drafted this dude, and we got to stay behind him until he gets injured or asked to be traded. Because if he's a Browns player and he's a starter, we got to rock. We got to ride with him.
Okay, just saying he got a lot of toys. Yeah. He got a lot of weapons around him, and he just
how are you bringing this up? Yeah.
All right, give me your top 5 welterweights right now in the world. Top 5 welterweights.
I think it's very simple. Keith Thurman, Terence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Shawn Porter.
And Keith Thurman #1?
You know what? No. There's no order. Okay. No order there. Don't put me in that corner.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm taking Keith out and I'm putting Danny in. Okay. Danny's been more busy. He's been the busier fighter of the two, and I just don't think that Keith is who he used to be at this point.
Interesting. Last but not least, finish this statement. A year from now, Shawn Porter will be.
A year from now, man, I don't know. A year from now, Shawn Porter will be surprised at where he is. And surprised at where he is. A year from now, Shawn Porter will be surprised at where he is.
I got it. Hey, listen, I love this, man. This was good.
There's no telling, man. I love who I am. I love what God's made me. I love what I'm able to be, what I'm afforded to be to everyone, from a sports standpoint, from a broadcasting standpoint, and even from just being a person. A quick story for you. I was at McDonald's just yesterday for my family, not for me. And somebody's next to me, and I think they heard my voice. And he looked, and he's at the screen next to me. He says, "Is that Shawn Porter?" I'm like, "What's up, man?" So he pulls up, and I pull up. So, "What's up, man? How you doing?" Talk to him for a minute. He says, "You're a Christian, right?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I'm headed to a Christian function right now." I was like, "Okay, cool, yeah." He said, "We all get together on Mondays." I was like, "Okay, cool." I said, "You taking breakfast for everybody?" He says, "No, not this time. Usually I do, but not this time." I said, "Well, how many of them are there?" He said, "Oh, it's about 10 to 15 of us." I said, "Do you have time?" He said, "For what?" I said, "Well, if I give you money, can you get everybody some food?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Was 20 enough?" He said, "Yeah, that's enough." I said, "Man, get everybody some food." I love that I can be that. I don't think Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather can just sit at a McDonald's and then be able to bless someone like that. Like, I love who I'm able to be all day, every day, man. And so I'm just gracious, even to you, for allowing me to waste your time today.
No, it's certainly not a waste of time. Any time I can spend with you, man, it is time well spent, my brother.
Yeah, thank you.
I thoroughly enjoy. You know what? And what I want to do, man, we finally got some new merchandise, so I got to send you a Last Stand shirt. That way you can use it when you're working out or whatever.
I'm with it, man. I'm with it, 100%.
I appreciate it. Folks, that's what we do here on The Last Stand. We bring you the biggest names in sports and entertainment, just like Showtime, Shawn Porter. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
God bless. Thank you.